In this week's brand new episode of Hill Climb Monsters in Project Cars 2, we're trying to tame a monster as the Mitsubishi Evolution SVA time attack car takes on our Azure Coast hill climb course. But with nearly 1,000 brake horsepower at its disposal, can it maybe challenge for top spot? Let's find out. What's going on, guys? My name's Batilio and welcome back to Project Cars 2 and a brand new episode of Hill Climb Monsters. And this week's challenger, as you can see on screen, is this, the Mitsubishi Evo SVA time attack car. And the reason I decided to go for this car for this week is it was actually something one of you guys suggested, one of our viewers / subscribers. So I'll pop the comments up on screen now. So the Great C left this comment on my Lotus 49C video, which I think was episode 6 or 7, something along those lines. And the comment goes as follows: great work on the series, really enjoying it, keep up the good work. Thank you. There are so many cars that would be awesome for this challenge. How about the Mitsubishi Evo time attack car? Might be good to have a car that was built for this kind of thing on the board. And he makes a very, very good point. While I enjoy this series and we've tried to, you know, sort of keep it within the realms of reality, I suppose, with some of the cars you might occasionally see on a hill climb, I guess. This is the only car that would properly fall into that category, I imagine. Because if you see those hill climb videos, the bodywork's vastly, you know, massively modified, wings everywhere to try and produce maximum downforce. So I've been looking forward to getting onto this car, and I should have done it a lot sooner, but we're finally getting around to it now. So thank you, Great C, for the comment and the suggestion. Hope you enjoy this video. But yeah, moving on and looking at some of the stats now. And as you would imagine, fairly impressive all around. The car itself was produced in 2016, but I think this is actually an earlier model. I think this is like an early 2000s sort of model, but I think 2016 is the year that this was actually built for its particular time attack purpose. Falls into the Track Day A category. It's all-wheel drive and has a 5-speed sequential gearbox bolted to a straight 4 engine, producing a massive 940 brake horsepower. So they're not playing around. 0 to 60 comes up in just over 3 seconds at a top speed of 180 miles an hour, weighing in at just over 3,000 pounds, which I think works out to about 1.5 tons. So one of the, I'm not going to say heavy, but it's heavier than some of the cars we've seen in the last 2 or 3 episodes. Control difficulty 2, cornering speed 2, and it doesn't feature any aids at all, no ABS traction control or any of that stuff. So yeah, in terms of practice and setup, this was one of the more challenging cars to set up. I'm not quite sure why. I mean, I went into this with I was caught off guard a little bit by how bad it was at cornering. I was expecting to be very, very responsive, but it just is very, very numb at the front end. So all the time I spent with setup, the majority of it was trying to just get a bit more feel in the front of the car, just to get it to be a bit more grippy, a bit more responsive, a bit more pointy, so to speak. So I left no stone unturned. I worked on dampers, which isn't normally my sort of field. I'm not really good at it. I don't fully understand it. I'm learning, but I don't fully understand it enough to just go in there and start doing things. But I did, you know, adjust the dampers, slow bump especially, just to try and get a bit more feel in the front end. Mess around with downforce, of course. The other problem I had is under braking, the rear end would tend to be very, very light. So I wound the bias back a little bit. I think it was set on 60/40 when I started. I wound it all the way back to, I think it was 55/45, and that seemed to help things a little bit. If I went further, it tended to be a case that I would start locking the front brakes up, which would just be, you know, leading to more and more accidents, basically. So it was a real challenging car to set up and a challenging car to drive. You had to, I think I've maybe been a little bit spoiled over the last 3 weeks with the TS050, the IndyCar, Lotus 98T. With all those cars, you turn it in and it goes where you want it to, pretty much. They call it like they're on rails for the most part. But this was a lot more challenging, so I had to sort of, you know, learn how to drive the car before I could start really pushing it, which is something that I haven't had to do for a little while. So yeah, it was a very challenging car to drive. As you would imagine, with it being a challenging car to drive, there were a few accidents here and there. The big one, of course, was, well, actually, in a place we don't normally get many accidents, coming down to Booty Curve. The rear of the car just went light and it just spat me off into that curb, and then it just, I don't know what it did, but it's like it was spring-loaded or something, and I went into a massive roll, and that was pretty much the end of that run. This next one, we're coming down to traffic cone corner, and I'm not quite sure what happened here. I think again it just got a little bit out of shape at the rear, and as I go to adjust, I think I just over adjusted, or it gripped right at the point where I was adjusting, and then it spat me off into an accident. So yeah, and then we've got another one towards the start of the lap as well. Again, this caught me out because it was very responsive on turning, which I wasn't expecting. Or it was more responsive than I was expecting, and I clipped the inside reservation, the central reservation, and it sent me off into an accident. So yeah, fair amount of accidents with this car in terms of practice and so on. But yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the actual run itself. Before we do that, let's just remind ourselves with regards to the full-blown leaderboard, see what's happening there. So the Toyota TS050 from last week sits top of the board with a 541.383. I think that's a little bit ambitious in terms of maybe shooting for that one. I don't think the Evo has it in its locker to beat the Toyota, but I know it's kind of hard to pick out a car that really should be challenging because it kind of stands alone. It's kind of a unique car within the game. It doesn't fall into any particular fixed category. It's just in sort of, just in the track day category, which is just a throwaway category for cars that don't fit elsewhere. So I'm not quite sure what it should be aiming for. Yeah, I'm not even going to say. We're just going to see what it can do. In terms of the full-blown leaderboard, and yeah, the challenge doesn't get any easier because I don't know if we're going to be able to get onto the first page. I would love to break the monopoly of the G57 Ginettas and the McLaren P1s, but I think again it'll be a bit of a challenge to do that, and I don't think it's quite got enough in there. Looking at page 2 though, and that's where we find the only SVA time on the actual leaderboard, and it was a 6:48.7, and it's down in 19th. So I think that's what we should be aiming for, aiming to beat that at the very least, and maybe top of page number 2 of the leaderboards. I think that's what we need to be aiming for. But yeah, so there's the challenge. There's what we're going to be aiming for. What we're going to do now is we're going to head down to the track, and we're going to see how the Mitsubishi SVA Evo Time Attack car got on its best run. Okay then guys, here we go. Mitsubishi Evo SVA Time Attack car on our Azure Coast hill climb, and as we come down to the first corner, you're going to see here we just get a little bit out of shape. As I said, it was such a challenge to try and get it set up and just get it to this point, but it's still not exactly where I'd want it. So it's still it was still a very, very challenging run to get right and to find the right braking zones and so on and so forth. But as we come now down towards Trash Can Corner, one of the surprising things with this car, it actually has a boost button. I'm not sure if it's sort of like akin to ERS or maybe even nitrous, because there is a nitrous tin in the passenger side footwell. So I'm not sure if it's nitrous we're on or if it's actually some sort of battery power. But it does give you a nice little bit of boost through some of the slower corners, because I believe this thing is turbocharged. So if you bog down on that turbo, you might want to get on the button. Just help you get out some of those slower corners, and just to alleviate those times where you could bog down and just have massive lag with the turbo. But as we come now down onto the happy highway again, we're on the button, but for the first time in a while, as we come to the crest, we're going to have to actually lift a little bit. This thing will go fully nose up if you're not paying attention, and if you try and go flat out. So that's one of the things you do have to take into account. And as we come now through traffic cone corner, you saw we've had accidents before previously. That was another corner that was tricky to get right in this car. But yeah, like I said, it's just I'm not quite sure where I can go with setup. I think I've got as far as I can go. I think it maybe needs someone who's a little bit better at setting things up than myself. I'm okay, but I'm not brilliant, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, and I am getting better. But this was just a real challenge, and I'm not quite sure why. I've had challenging cars in the past, and I've been able to get it, near 95% to where I want it to be. But with this, it's just you go one way and it starts going another. In setup wise, it's a real challenge, and I'm not quite sure what I need to do to get it exactly how I want it. And another thing with this car is fast changes of direction don't really suit this. It's a little bit understeer, but it can really get squirmy at the rear end, so it's kind of the worst of both worlds, I guess. But as we come now down towards James May corner, and again, this is one of the better cars through here, actually. Very solid, very stable. Getting on the power is, fairly straightforward. You don't have to tippy-toe through there, but through here, coming down towards the end of the first sector, you do have to be a little bit careful through there, and especially so into Silver Spoon Village. I'm to come down into third from fifth, just to get it down, slowed down and get it where I want it, so the throttle's responsive as we come down the hill and through Danger Curve and onto Outrun. And again, normally the last few cars have been able to go flat out through here, but through this second section, the second part of it, I've had to lift a little bit. And again, I've had to be cautious as we come down the dip and up to a Fraggle Rock corner. We're going to get it down to third gear, get the nose in, get back on the power, and again on that boost, that whatever it is, nitrous or battery power. And as we head now down towards Bridge Corner, again this area here, having to tippy toe a little bit. Get it down into second gear, try to get the nose in, get it slowed down as we head now up towards the start of the Monger Hill Complex. And honestly, it wasn't too bad through here. The first sector, the first section, especially through the early part of it, was where I was really having troubles with this car, where it was very challenging, but it seemed very much at home through the middle sector, which the majority of it is the the proper sort of hill climb sections, I suppose you could say. It was very, very settled. It was very good on turning through some of the, I would call medium speed corners, but again, I think I could still get it a little, I could still wind it down and get it where I want it to be a little bit more, I suppose you could say. I don't know how much more with my own setup knowledge I can move it forward, but I still think there's still time to find, definitely on the run, and I think a lot of that time that you'll find is just through setup. But as we come over the humps and into Mirage 1, we're going to get it down into second gear for Mirage 2. And again, it wasn't too bad through there. We've had worse cars through there. We've also had better ones. And now we're on to the pogo stick straight. And again, got to be wary, got to be careful, because this thing can go fully nose up. So we don't get beyond 125 mile an hour down there, because you're having to lift off just to make sure you don't go nose up and into a very, very big accident. And through here, very good. A lot of cars have a tendency to just drift out and hit that wall if you take it too quickly, but this seemed very, very planted. Like I said, through this middle sector, it was very, very good. I'm not quite sure why it was so bad through the first sector and really good through here. The second sector is normally the more challenging of the two, but I suppose inadvertently my setup has led to it being good through there. But as we come now towards onto what is the start of the final sector, and again we're going to get on that boost button just to give us a little bit extra through this this flat out section of the track, and down towards the next couple of corners, this fast left right. And I'm having to lift off and come down a gear, because you can see it's just drifting out wide. It's just very, very understeery towards the back end of some of the faster corners. And again, down here I'm having to get down a gear. Actually, normally you can go through there flat out, just a little lift, and just get the nose in and get the rear settled. But with this, you're having to come down a gear just to get it where you want it to be. And as we come through Deception for the first time, you can see we almost get caught out by it. The corner still lives up to its name from time to time. It almost catches us out there. I think we maybe nicked it a little bit on the right hand side, but I don't think it lost us too much time in the contact. But running wide, like I said, it's just towards the back end of some corners it will just run wide, and I don't know whether that's just because inherently, four or all-wheel drive cars tend to be a little bit understeery. But this one, it feels like it may go a little bit beyond that just general over the understeery nature that all-wheel drive cars have. But again, through here, this is where I was a little bit wary with it being all-wheel drive, and also with it being quite understeery, because you can very easily get caught out through this section, especially up here, slightly off camber on the entry. But we get it through nice and easily. We don't go up to fifth. We come down into second just to get through this final corner. I've had troubles through here. I blew a pretty good run earlier on by just taking a bit too much speed and hitting the wall. But as we come across the line, it's going to be a time of 6 minutes 39.735. So that time is good enough to put it a very respectable 7th on our Hill Climb Monsters leaderboard, and it's beaten some pretty good cars there. You got the BMW M1, the Porsche 93577. It's not too far off beating the Porsche 917/10. It's only a couple of seconds off that time, so I'd say 7th is a pretty respectable time for the Mitsubishi Evo SVA time attack car. And on the full-blown leaderboard, as you can see, we've got 13th in the world, and it's now currently the fastest Mitsubishi Evo SVA time attack time. So I'm relatively happy with that. I would have liked to have gotten the top of page 2, as I said, but I still think with this particular setup that I've got on the car, I think I could do it, but I think to get any more out of it, I don't think anybody's going to be able to get to the bottom of page number 1, because that's a good it's a 631, I think it is. So I think that's a lot of time to find with this car. But you never know. There could be an absolute alien out there who's really good at setup. And if you are, feel free. But yeah, I'm relatively happy with that time. I think that's a pretty respectable time all in all. I do think I could have gone a bit quicker with a bit more time. But as we know, we only have an hour to set our best time and 2 hours to play with setup and practice and so on. So overall, I'm relatively happy with that time, and I think it's pretty respectable. But yeah, there we go. Mitsubishi Evo SVA time attack car, now 7th on our leaderboard. So there you go. But that's the end of today's video, guys. So thank you everybody so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, would like to see more Project Cars 2 or just general racing content from myself, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you have suggestions for cars you would like to see me drive in this series, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm always happy to hear from you and talk to you guys, and if I do like your suggestion and I do decide to do it in one of the episodes, as you've seen, I will definitely give you a shout out in the video itself, so a little bit of incentive for you. But once again, guys, thank you everybody so much for watching. Take care, and as always, I will catch you in the next video. Peace.